Good afternoon, everybody. Thursday, a little bit later than normal, but it's still a Thursday, so it is time for Agave sessions. First of all, thank you everybody who has continued to join us, who has continued to watch us, has supported the conversations we've had, have been involved, been engaged, asked questions, see the value and kind of bring some of these topics and some of these conversations to the forefront. I am very lucky to work in the category of agave spirits. I think anybody who does work in that category would also feel the same way. But it's not all, it's not all fun all the time. It's a lot of fun a lot of the time, but it is also work. And, because we get to work in such a culturally relevant space, I think that carries a little bit more weight and a little bit more responsibility than kind of your average ambassador job or bar job or brand job, if you will. And one of the people who I think really brought that to light for me was today's guest, who I'm very lucky to welcome back on the show, and that is the very esteemed Mr. David Suro from Siembra Spirits, from Suro Importers, from Tequilas in Philadelphia. The Tequila Interchange Project, Bat Friendly, so many things that we could go on about. But we'll talk about all those here today. David, how are you doing, my friend?
Very good, Francisco. Very, very good. And thank you for inviting me again. I feel quite honored to appear for the second time in your projects, and which I highly appreciate. The amount of information that you've been providing for all of us that we love spirits is very good. I really congratulate you, and I thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with you guys.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, I was very lucky to have Tomas on yesterday, and to follow up with you today is phenomenal. You're our first repeat guest, hopefully not our last repeat guest. We'd love to have Pedro back on, Rodrigo back on. But thank you so much for giving us some more of your time. I was looking back, and I can't believe that it was, I think, in May when you and I spoke last. I can't believe how much time has gone on since then. It really flew by unbelievably.
Yeah, no, it's time is not flying, right? During this time, we would like to uh, keep doing as much as we can to go back to some normal standards of working. Especially for people like you and I who are used to travel all over, presenting our products and talking about what we are so passionate feel about it. So yeah, but it's been a long year. But one of the things that I really like is that you're a very good example. We are kind of like a captivated audience, and to hear conversations like the one that you promote and you create is just wonderful. Don't have so many distractions around us, and be able to catch up with great presenters and to hear great conversations and topics that are getting more and more interesting and deeper when it comes to agave spirits. I really see that our industry and our category especially is been getting, the conversation is more robust. Uh, you know, as time is going through. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the conversations were very light. They were very superficial. So thanks to people like you, we getting more into details. They're very necessary. So let's do it, my friend.
I mean, I can't really. None of those conversations would not have been had if it weren't for when you were coming to Austin, when I first met you, traveling to up and down the East Coast, since you're based out of Philadelphia, traveling in Chicago. But I'm very encouraged, I guess, to hear you say that, because I've been working in agave spirits for only about 5 years, but you've been working in it for a large portion of your professional life. You know, once you opened Tequilas and then moved into the brand side of things and importing and owning a brand, you have seen, I guess, have you seen it sounds like you have seen progress in the evolution of the level of discourse, I guess is what you were saying. And that was one of the things I was curious about. If you find yourself kind of repeating the message, or you actually do see people taking these concepts, becoming more aware, becoming more conscientious in their purchasing decisions, whether it's the end consumer or if it's a bar manager or a retail buyer. You know, are you seeing a higher level of not just discourse, but also a higher level of standards for what people are bringing into their shops, into their bars, into their home bars?
You know, I see that there is always going to be this niche of mass consumption and mass production, you know, that is not going to change. But what I'm happy to see is that the niche of people who are, you know, their conscience are tuning to, you know, be more aware of how fragile our agave spirits can be, to see the niche of people who are focusing environmental issues and social issues, to see those niches grow is quite inspiring. You know, it used to be only a few people that you can find through the United States who were totally engaged. Now you see groups, very large groups of people who are more and more aware that is a lot for us to do in order to preserve our beloved spirits. So
you know, as we see the transmission of information becoming easier, as we see information traveling faster, as we see access to producers increase, the relationship, the distance between people increase, and you might know where I'm going with this. People who watch the show probably know where I'm going with this. Do you see a risk, or do you think it's easy to manage that level of access to people that people have to producers and expect to producers, and the level of transparency that brands bring to the consumer? Because you were really one of the progenitors of that. You really have kind of set the standard in the tequila industry for the amount of information you're giving to your consumers. And then, you know, on the mezcal side of things, Vago's always worked really hard at that, as you know, as consumers know. Do you see any danger in providing too much access between producer and consumer? Or do you think that's nothing but a good thing? Or do you see producers maybe losing a little bit of their autonomy and kind of their humanity, and just kind of becoming almost like zoo attractions, you know, like just nothing but a plate glass between the producer and the consumer?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, let me start from the other side. There is lots of information that I find it very distractive when it comes to marketing tools that large conglomerates are using to promote their brands. They're loaded with a lot of misinformation. So I find that more dangerous than the producers who have lots of traceability and transparency on their projects, and they provide that to the consumer. I think that's, you know, it's a lot of information in both sides, and it's a lot of information that it can be also overwhelming and can turn people away from, can intimidate a consumer that he has the potential to walk in and get deeper into agave spirits. But I think a balance of information and to dosify the information, and to increase the number of educators in a category is fundamental, you know, because it is, even at the academic level, I find out, I've been doing a lot of research for a project that is coming up, that even on the academic world is a lot of information, but it's dispersed all over. And the more I read and the more I study, the more I learn that how much is still there for us to understand and to decodify when it comes to, you know, our agaves, for example. I mean, I don't think we have that much information about all what is inside those plants. I don't think we have that much information or enough research into understand how fermentations work. What's the effect of the yeast on the agave fermented juices? So there is tons of information that is there. I think that is in the next 10 years, we have a lot of work to do in order to make it accessible to every level of aficionados to agave spirits. There is a lot of work in the academia to continue to explore all the unknown on the agave spirits, which is, I think, is fascinating. So information and education is something that I always pay a lot of attention, for myself, to educate myself as much as I can, but also to transmit that to the people who I have the opportunity to share the stories that I've been learned through the last 30 years that I've been involved on the agave spirits. Yeah.
And you're speaking about the scientific information that exists now, the scientific information that remains to be discovered. But the further along, and you have really set the tone for my own level, for my own approach to what it is that we do. For example, the Mas Mezcal blog, which we've referenced a lot, and not recently, but historically, we've gone pretty in depth with things about fermentation and things like that. And it's always a balance that I try and strike for myself. But do you worry that the further down that road of discovery, the further we get away from kind of the mystery or the romance and kind of the magic that there is in these agave spirits? Or do you think that those two things can coexist at the same time and not lose the for lack of a better term, the beauty that there is in that mystery behind agave spirits that makes them so attractive for a lot of people?
Yeah. I really don't think that we will damage that aspect that I think is beautiful on agave spirits, that mysticism, that magic, that the curiosity for anybody that is approach to agave spirits. I think there is so many things that's still up there that, to the contrary, I think that will help people to get even more involved in the agave spirits. I don't think that we even uncover the tip of the iceberg when it comes to understand agave spirits. I really feel that way. I was talking recently with the people from CIATEC, which is an institution that they're involved in food research, and they've been investing a lot of their resources on agave spirits. They're based here in Jalisco. And that's I bring that example because 20 years ago, this group of scientists, they have one proposition, and they have one position when it comes to fermentation on agave spirits. And but everything they were studying was based on studies of other sugar sources. A lot of the research they were doing was based, or they were taking as reference, grape or sugarcane or grain spirits, and they start to focus more on agave spirits, and their whole proposition of knowledge that is give to us now is almost the opposite position they used to have. And they're very humble to understand, to admit that there was not enough knowledge. They thought they know a lot about agave spirits and that particular area of fermentation. Now they say, the more that we get deep into it, the more we learn, and they still don't feel confident that they are close to figure out scientifically where we are or what happened during the fermentation on agave spirits. So to reach the point to the question where it feels dangerous for us to find out all these mysteries, I think it's a couple generations that we are a couple generations away for that to happen. And in the meantime, I think it's fascinated to continue to uncover the mysteries of agaves in all the areas where they are, how humans interact for thousands of years, how agaves were used as a food source, how agaves were used as a medicinal sources, how we make spirits or alcohol beverages out of these incredible plants. So, and I think, and I tell you from somebody who tried to educate himself every day, the more that I learn, the more convinced I am that I probably not going to have enough years of my life to really reach a point where I think that I know enough of these spirits and this culture and the history of these spirits.
So, and just for the record, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that's one of the reasons I kind of figured where you were going to go with that. But for those watching at home, I think sometimes it benefits you guys to hear from somebody who's much more eloquent about that than I am. Speaking about, the scientific research that's being done, what is some of the newer research, or what are some of the topics that people are starting to look at that you find to be the most exciting or the most interesting?
Yeah, but we can talk history also, so science, because one of the hottest topics, in my opinion, and when I present to people this topic, it becomes very interesting and very challenging, is where agave spirits come from. Where is the genesis of these spirits? As you mentioned, agave spirits are surrounded by mystery and unknown topics. And I think the most interesting topic is when we start to see in our history the consumption of spirits, not fermented agave beverages, but spirits of agave. That topic for me is as you know, we talk so much about this topic, is to really, really, it probably is one of my goals when it comes to when I can say, this is mission accomplished, or one thing that you can just mark as check, is to figure out where is the moment of agave spirits, who is which cultural group, where this distillation take place in Mesoamerica, and I know the human aspect of terroirs for some people is not as relevant of the soil components, the nutrients of the raw material, or the weather, the region. In my opinion, the human aspect of terroir for agave spirits is fundamental. Not in the sense of the organoleptic results of the human aspect, but I think is the combination of so many things that are linked to the culture of Mexico, the Mexican culture, and the appreciation, the value that agave spirits may obtain. We can prove when, and especially if it's pre-European arrival, because that will put us into thousands of years of a cultural evolve of agave spirits, which in my opinion, that has a tremendous value, and it will help us to bring the category to another level of appreciation. Yeah.
that was one of the things that I figured. I didn't want to put you on the spot and ask you about it, so I figured I would leave it very open. And if you wanted to bring that particular topic up, then I figured you would do it if you felt like it. So I'm very, very glad that you did touch on that. And I know that's a topic of conversation that one of our good friends likes to open up pretty frequently, and that's actually Joaquin from Rancho Grande. He I guess he's watching on one of the channels, and he typed in to say hello to you. So hello
Joaquin.
to Joaquin. He's watching this afternoon.
Joaquin.
Congratulations to his brother as well, who just had a small baby, who just had a little one.
Oh, yeah, please, Joaquin, tell your brother that I send my love to him and the family and the new Tio. Congratulations, Tio. Yeah.
So, David,
I'm here for 10 more days. So if you want to join us, Francisco, Francisco and Joaquin.
We'll make a group trip. So, we were talking about kind of that balance between the modern and the historic, right? The culture versus the scientific. And this next question is one that I kind of touched on with you earlier, and I want to hear your perspective on it. Is, where does that balance also lie, as you just said, for the people involved, right? So the producers, particularly less, I think, as it pertains to tequila, or maybe as much so, but maybe not on the producer side, but at the jimador level, and also the mezcalero side, the vinatero side of things. These families who historically have just eked out an existence producing these spirits, as people like yourself and myself, Vago as a company, so many of our other friends who own other brands that are very responsibly bringing culture from another place to the public. How do we balance the economic opportunity that hopefully our work provides some of these people, not to sound too much of to have that much of a savior complex, right? But I mean, working with directly and working for Acalino's family, for Tio Rey's family, all we want to do is help them achieve self-actualize, have their own stability, and be able to make up their own destiny, right? Because I feel like a lot of times producers are just looking for the path that's available to them, and historically that has been mezcal. And this is actually a conversation I had with Todd Hanley when we were down in Michoacan visiting Emilio, was that, if these people want to preserve these traditions, we want that to be an option for them, not just be the only path to existence for themselves, right? But if people want to be an engineer, great, let them go be an engineer. Where do you think these brands fit in that role of helping pay for a mezcalero's son's tuition, and then he goes off and decides he does want to be an engineer instead of being a mezcalero? You see what I'm saying? Like, how do we also at the same time preserve those traditions and those cultures, but then also not necessarily, for lack of a better word, kind of force people into it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating, to see some of the producers. You mentioned Emilio, which, by the way, he just walked into my house. He's down in the kitchen right now. But he's a very good example. When Emilio reached the point where he had to decide what he wants to do for the rest of his life, Emilio chose in the beginning to be a veterinarian. He wants to be a doctor, take care of animals, and he loves that. That was where his passion was. But at the same time, he has the curiosity of what his grandfather and his father and his great-grandparents were doing. But there was never that economical incentive, because you have to remember, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, especially in Michoacan, there was not enough economical incentives for a person who was involved in producing mezcal. So just imagine if you growing and you see the lack of economical opportunities in your father's profession. Obviously, you're not gonna be, you don't want to repeat that. You want to do something else. But what about if the opposite happened? If you see your parents are developing a very prosper business based on producing mezcal, I think that's a big incentive for the new generation to maintain and transmit the knowledge. I see that with a lot of producers that now they start to be able to offer a great opportunity, a great economical opportunity in future for their generations to come. But I also see a lot of mezcaleros and taberneros that they were not able to do that, and they lose their generations, not just to college or for them to decide to do something else. They migrate to the United States. So I think at the end of the day, everything goes back to economics. I mean, if you are a young person and you start to understand that in order to develop a future and to create and sustain a family, you have to make a decent amount of money. What about if that resource is within the family business? You know, it happens to me on the restaurant industry. You know, my two sons, they are involved in the industry because they like it, because they see there is an interest. I mean, I was able to generate that curiosity and to make them to come to the tequila industry, to the restaurant industry, and now they are very interested also in the spirits industry. So it's a combination of, you know, the desire for the individual to be better and to exceed on life, but also it has to be enough motivation and enough elements there that guarantee their future. But if somebody wants to be an engineer, or somebody wants to be an architect or veterinarian like Emilio, it's great that a family of mezcaleros can provide the education and diversify their you know, family structure, economically speaking.
So you know, and I'm so glad that you answered it that way, because I think that kind of illustrates one of the big points that we always focus on, and that I focus on a lot in my conversations with consumers, is that, you know, the best way that we as brands, I feel like, can do that is to pay a fair amount for the amount of labor that goes into these spirits, and to provide that economic incentive as a safeguard from these people abandoning these practices, and showing them that it is, in fact, a very, not necessarily super lucrative, but a very stable, a stable, healthy, happy life, right? And pay them to make sure of that.
Do you know what else also, Francisco, I think is very important? And talking to some of the sons of maestros that I've been going and visited, and you know, when we bring the groups to their palenques or the vinatas or the tabernas, one element that I think is very important is the sense of pride that they feel to being. I mean, I remember people ask me, say, "You mean that these guys, these American guys, they're coming all the way from Chicago, from New York, from San Francisco to meet us?" And you said, "Yes, you know, and you are heroes for these people. They have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do." I think that in many occasions is even more important than the economical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to generate that sense of pride and to recognition that you're doing something that very few people in the universe are capable to do, is incredibly important. You know, so and it also works the opposite way. When you see people or you know, savvy business people who come to these communities and take advantage of them, that really creates a conflict of appreciation for the generations to come. There we go again. Is the abuse of the wealthy guy or the people from the city or the foreigner to come to invade our families' traditions and just take advantage. That's very important. And when I walk into bar programs who are claimed to be extremely committed to their agave spirits program and cocktails, but they are using products that are way underpriced.
Exactly.
The only way that product is used in that bar for economical greed. The repercussion of that, I don't think many people understand or want to understand. But to have mezcales selling way below their margins of pride of the mezcalero is to have a double standard. We as a restaurant or bar owners, we have to understand that in order for us to enjoy and spirit with the characteristics that we are getting more and more information, and it's more and more proof that they are some of the most unique, if not the most unique spirits on the world. And we're paying $20 for a liter, and we are comfortable with that. I think we have to look ourselves in the mirror and really understand that at that pace and with that approach, this spirit is going to be diluted to something that is just going to be a spirit from Mexico, but with no cultural link, with not future history.
I'm so glad you said that, because that is exactly the punctuation that I wanted to put on that sentence, basically, for that whole part of the discourse we just had, was that essentially you have to be willing to pay enough for these spirits, right? You have to be willing to pay a fair value, an incentivizing value,
a respectable value.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's something that even as bar operators, I haven't owned a bar. I've managed a bar. I've made purchasing decisions for a bar. And I understand the flexibility that sometimes the stress of owning a bar or being responsible for a bar puts operators under. But there's certain things that you have to not necessarily be flexible about, and having that that floor for agave spirits is, I think, one of them. In order to achieve what we all want to be a fair model, from the harvester level, from the jimador level in the case of tequila, or the family level, and usually in the case of mezcal, all the way through to the consumer.
We often hear conversations that go in the direction where, well, they are very poor people and we are offering something.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's a conversation that for me is one of the most, short vision and evil conversations that I hear, because, poverty, I mean, how you mention poverty. I don't think that, if these people were making next to nothing and you're going to give them $5 or a few dollars for their product, you're not helping them at all, because you're going to make them work a lot more. You're going to break down the equilibrium on their ecosystems. You're going to have a tremendous impact on their surrounding area. We don't want a true maestro to exceed the capacity to provide the uniqueness of his spirits. So the people ask, okay, so what is the answer? We want them to make more money. I say, no, I think we want them to be more pride and to be the guardians of a culture that is being stable for thousands of years. And I don't think we just have to, the only alternative that I will say, that a lot of people disagree with it, but is we have to pay more and drink less. and we probably will appreciate a lot more if we compensate that producer with what is deserved. I remember a very clear conversation, and I think they illustrate this very well, a conversation that we have with Pedro Jimenez from Mesonte. But you know, Pedro Jimenez, if he's somebody who cares about maintaining this balance in the industry, you know, somebody like Pedro, who is extremely aware of how delicate and sensitive it is just to start to produce more and more. I mean, the idea is not to produce more, the idea is to sell better. But I remember one conversation that he has, that he said, you know, that a guy from the single malt culture came to Guadalajara to visit Mesonte, his tasting room here in Guadalajara. And when Pedro was going through explaining and tasting the different expressions of different producers from Mesonte portfolio, the guy said, you know, these bottles should cost thousands of dollars. Compared with within the context that he has of producing one of the most, you know, respected spirits in the world, which are single malts. So I think that the way that we present to the world agave spirits for many generations was always with these social, you know, handicaps that because he's somebody very poor from the indigenous origin, you know, from a village that is, you know, hard to find in a map, we can pay whatever we want. I think we have to do better work as an educators, as ambassadors, as bar managers, is to understand and to explain to the consumer that this is rare. This is something extremely rare, that is a liquid art, that it has an enormous amount of value. And I don't find any other way to approach other than increase the amount of money that we pay for and consume less, because it's not sustainable. You know very well that mezcal, by its nature, and the way that the raw material is available to producers, it takes many years to develop. So we're not capable to maintain the pace of increased production without really create a huge damage on the ecosystems and the biodiversity of agaves.
You have, you know, what are some of the resources, I guess, what's the best way for consumers to educate themselves about kind of what that floor is for production? You know, what are some of the best strategies to make sure that they are paying enough and that they're not necessarily just paying the right price, but also that just because something is high priced doesn't, and we've seen the example in some of the other expressions of whether it be tequilas or mezcal that are out on the market, just because it's at a certain price point doesn't mean that that price point, that fair compensation is making its way down the supply chain, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that consumers can make sure they're making the right decisions?
You see, tequilas, they are precisely that. I mean, their marketing is strategic, is to use not in the liquid, but in the glass. You know, there's I stopped by the other day here in Guadalajara into a liquor store, and it was funny, you know, to see bottles that they were valued in $300, $400, $500. That if you pay me that amount of money, it will not be enough money for me to put that stuff into my system, you know, because I know how they are produced, you know. But it is education, Francisco, and that's why I celebrate what you guys are doing. But we have to be more efficient. We have to continue this because if we're not able to, we cannot just put a bottle of mezcal in front of a consumer who doesn't have any prejuicios, how you say prejuicios? It doesn't have any preconceptions. You know, like if it's going to be expensive, good, bad, unique. Somebody who's just willing to taste something different, and when I say, you know, you're going to have to pay $120 for this bottle of a Mexican spirit that is called mezcal. what elements are there for this person to, you say, okay, I'm willing to pay that, but what is so unique about it? So that's one aspect that we still have a lot of work to do in be more efficient in how to make information accessible, how to make information fun, challenging for people who appreciate these things. I mean, it's not easy to understand from a cultural perspective or from an environmental perspective, these complex spirits. But in the meantime, we're losing producers or we're losing species of agaves because a lot of people have a curiosity, but they really don't know what the impact is. So if you ask me for how we can be more efficient, I don't have an answer. If I have the answer, I will apply it. I've been trying to figure out that to generate an answer like that for the last 30 years, and a very involved. That was why Siembra Spirits became Siembra Spirits, because I want to create this tool that allows me to get close to the consumer. But it's not easy. I mean, it's a lot easier to sell something easy to digest by a consumer, something marketing wise, catchy and or a beautiful bottle, or they're very easy elements to be assimilated by a consumer. But to assimilate, what the people there behind me are all about it. I mean, you have Chepe Romero right here. I mean, this guy's holding a coa, and his brother Juan right here. Those guys, just to understand how they harvest an agave, and to transmit that to a people, and to make understand how heavy these instruments are, how accurate they have to be, how many years they took for them to learn how to do that. It's not that attractive, like, if you bring somebody from a Hollywood scene to say, this is the best product because I say, and because I'm a big movie star, So it is sometimes frustrated not being able to really come up with it's very easy to digest arguments that can help people to value better these wonderful spirits.
You mentioned that you go into a liquor store in Guadalajara, and in my experience, having worked in agave spirits, and my experience traveling in Mexico, living in Mexico for a short period of time, it seems like the domestic market for mezcal is just starting, and agave spirits is just starting to kind of catch up to where the recognition for these producers and the concept of paying for the right parts for the right things in the production line is just starting to catch up to kind of where the U.S. craft bar scene has been for a few years now. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, it is. I mean,
why that is?
I think it's a lot of my friends in Guadalajara, they're going to be upset with me. I'm going to have to watch out when I walk out of my house today, but I think we have a better selection of agave spirits in Astor Wine Spirits in New York, or Morenos in Chicago, or the stores in California and Texas, than Guadalajara. Guadalajara is the mecca for tequila, but the shelves of the stores, they are aiming only for an economical incentives they are paid to liquor stores. I remember in my last trip to Oaxaca, a couple of years ago, when I get off the airplane and I look the bar that is at the airport in Oaxaca City, there were a lot more rums and mezcal and vodkas and whiskeys than mezcal on the shelf of that bar in Oaxaca City. But if you go to the stores, liquor stores, and places in United States, they are a lot more diversity of products within the quality niche, and that's something that it always frustrates me to see that in here in Guadalajara. I mean, you go to tequila. I was in Tequila, Jalisco, just a few days ago, and the brands that dominate the mecca of tequila are focused into stereotypes. They not providing they don't want probably people to really understand the history of the category of that they represent, because they are huddled when it comes to quality on their products. It's all about marketing. So the Mexican consumer is changing. I mean, it's better. It's getting a little bit better, but the Mexican consumer is very, very vulnerable to marketing strategics. They're being imposed in this country for during this boom of the tequila and mezcal consumption that we experience right now.
Is it, do you think maybe a little bit of it is because historically there's been kind of this desire for a large part of Mexican society to move away from the indigenous, to move away from the rural?
We are very classy society in Mexico. United States, we are struggling with the racism. But Mexico, we struggle with classism.
Yeah,
it's very.
I saw somebody put that exact thing on Twitter last night. It's funny that you say that.
Yeah, it is for a lot of a big sector of society to be leaned to the indigenous origins of the country. It was not something cool. I mean, you want to lean more of identify with European influence that we have as a culture. So mezcal and tequila, they've been great ambassadors of the indigenous Mexico. A lot of the strategics of the, these very nice story that was built around tequila. You have to remember that the official story of tequila that is presented by many big brands is that the origin, they accredit, ¿cómo se dice acreditar? They recognize the father of tequila, an individual that arrived from Spain, Pedro Sanchez de Tagle, was a marquis from Altamira, and a guy with this very impressive title that he comes to Mexico and teaches how to produce tequila. We have a historical archives that they're being studied with a very thorough analysis of the content of these historical archives, and we find out that this guy, who's supposed to be the father of tequila, he was not even in the region into later years when these big companies of tequila, when they build up their own story, and they want to link themselves to somebody who was connected to royalty in Spain, in order to create a distance from these indigenous origins. So that shows us that some of the brands in Mexico, they've been doing a very good job and try to not to connect their origins to its origins, which is indigenous origins.
Right.
And it's something that it resonates much better if it's indigenous, if it's exotic. It resonates much better with the consumers outside of Mexico.
We only have about 5 more minutes, and there was one question I wanted to get to that I would love to hear your perspective on. Being from Guadalajara, growing up in that culture, having spent so much time in the United States, and now being somebody who is bringing these products, telling these stories of these producers, and one of the things I talk about is our roles as people telling these stories when these stories might not necessarily be our own stories, and I think that for me that leads to an idea of appropriation, right? And how does somebody who didn't grow up producing mezcal or in a mezcal family, or somebody who is not from Mexico like myself, is from the borderlands, or somebody who isn't even of a certain ethnicity, how does that person responsibly, present these spirits, tell these spirits, because I mean, I know a bunch of brand ambassadors who don't have a Spanish or Mexican last name that are representing agave brands, and they do great work. They have a wonderful respect for the products. What do you think is important to be a responsible representative for these families and these products and this culture? And that's, I'll wrap up with that.
I don't think nationality matters at all. I mean, we see that in a lot of aspects of Mexico. I mean, some of the best studies in the academia, guess what? They're not done by Mexican academics. I mean, a lot of them they are, and I don't want to put under the Mexican academia, but a lot of the very important and relevant studies, they've been done by professors, scientists from outside of Mexico. But I don't think that in order to be an ambassador and to, as the main credential is to be Mexican, not at all. I think the amount of respect that you dedicate to the spirits is what is the most important thing. I mean, I as you say, I'm binational. I mean, I'm very comfortable going back and forth and be very proud and very familiar with both cultures, through my 35 years of living in the United States, but never leave Mexico. I think it's above and beyond nationality. I think it's all about the respect that you have for the category and the culture of Mexico. And you are a great example. And people like Tomas Estes, I mean, just to mention somebody that is known by everybody and all over the world. I mean, Tomas Estes doesn't look very Mexican to me, and it's not, I bet you his birth certificate is not Mexican, but what an incredible ambassador. Ron Cooper, I mean, Ron Cooper is not Mexican, even if he looks more Mexican than Tomas.
He's from a whole other planet, man. He's incredible.
But look at the example of Ron Cooper. I mean, this one individual that he really started the conversation outside of the stereotype conversations of mezcal, and they're recognized in both parts of the border and all over the world as a great ambassador. So no. I mean, I don't think the agaves really request ID in order to express their they don't recognize borders, and they move freely all across Mexico, and they are. I think the respect is the only credential or the only passport that you need to be an agave ambassador and to be justified as an agave ambassador. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, David, I'm going to ask you one last quick question. You mentioned a project that you're working on. I don't even know what that is. Can you share anything, or are we just going to have to wait to find out?
I'm at the point where I prefer to wait a little bit. And one of those projects, the other project that I can share with you is that we are about to launch new labels for Siembra Spirits.
Oh, that's awesome.
They are the container having few of the new labels just arrived to New York yesterday, to our warehouse in New York.
Wow.
It's gonna be released. Orders are all day. We've been working in orders from our distributors across the United States. So that's a project that now, because it is physically United States and it clear customs, I can share that is a new project that it took us about a year to put together. New labels. Our labels in our portfolio, they've been kind of in the minimalistic side, the modern side. And now we're going to turn 180 degrees of going into the traditional labels of agave spirits, because I want to honor our slogan of our company, the future of tradition. So we start with the future package. Now we're going to the traditional package, taking to the future. So very exciting to share that with you. Distributors are placing orders. They should be available on the markets very soon.
Thank you, David. I'm
I
glad
will
you got in that future of tradition, because I think you have done an incredible job of striking that balance of promoting and preserving at the same time. That is so vital for these incredibly cultural relevant, culturally historic spirits that I think the world is better for having in it rather than being without them. So thank you so much for all of your work and your time this afternoon. And please travel safe on your way back from Guadalajara, and be safe while you're down there. Be healthy, and we will see you whenever we can, my friend.
There we go. Nice to see you, man. I really appreciate, and keep doing such an incredible job that you're doing. You are really putting an incredible project of education, and you do so good. You are just so good in what you're doing and helping so many people to create and to enhance the curiosity and the love for agave spirits.
Thank you,
I
Michael.
appreciate it.
That means the world to me.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful time. Say hello to Emilio. Say hello to Marite. Take care.
I will. Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.